Welcome, everybody. My name is Octavius Blount, also known as the Urban Thinker. We're back. Good by myself. I was gone for a little bit, but I got married to my lovely wife, Rosalind. So I appreciate you all for sticking with us. We're here with the Middle Brother podcast. I'm glad we're back, and I'm glad we have another good brother with us today. We have a brother that's a producer, traveler, and well-known teacher. Brother, if you can introduce yourself, please do.
Thank you, Brother Octavius. My name is Wayne Britt. I am, as he said, I am a teacher. I'm a sixth grade social studies teacher. I'm down here in D.C. I'm from Philly, from Germantown to be specific. 28 years old, Temple alumni grad, on my way to getting my master's from Johns Hopkins in education. So, yeah, just glad to be here. I'm glad to see you, of course, Octavius. So, yeah.
It's always glad to see you, brother. Again, I'm going to give you your praise now. I want to also say continue to give you congratulations with Johns Hopkins. Good brother. I appreciate you for allowing me to be in your life, allowing to hear the great work that you're doing, and allowing me to see the great work that you're doing as well. So we're just going to kick it off. You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right. So the first question I got for you is, what's one thing you love about being a black man?
One thing I love about being a black man, I think it's kind of like a double-edged sword, I'd say, because I really appreciate just, I guess, like the perspective. And I kind of dive deeper into that, like, you know, the way that our lives, our neighborhoods, our communities are shaped, give us a totally different perspective on how we view different situations. So like one thing that I hear a lot of my students talk about, and something I talk about is like how you handle certain adversity, like, oh, the lights go off. Like we think about our perspective. If lights go off, from my perspective, it's just like, all right, I know I need the candles. I know I need a lighter. I know I need, some other things. Where somebody may say, oh, if the lights go off, I don't really know what I'm going to do. So,
yeah.
I think like just in that sense, having like, that sort of different perspective, like almost like I gotta get up, I gotta fix it. Something's wrong. I can't just sit back and just, be like, oh man, something's wrong. I gotta get up. I gotta find some creative way to fix this problem. So, that's, I feel like that's both man and woman as well, but that's one thing I enjoy about or love, about being a black man.
Okay. I think what I'm hearing is I would also add and just into the space of just resiliency when it comes to being a black man and being able to, everyone says you got to stand on your own 2 feet, sit there and say, do what you got to do, move forward, push forward. But in that resiliency, we also got to remember there is some time for ourselves. There is time for taking a break. But I love what you said. It's different perspectives in different situations, because when we look at black men and black women, some situations are different. So I commend you for saying that and understanding where you're coming from too, especially with young people that you're teaching. They're coming from a different perspective as well in your class. So I know I'm going to hear some things from you when it comes around teaching. I know it's going to be stories, abundant stories about you, your students, and also the life that you live. So we're just going to slide right into the space of getting deeper down into who you are and just digging. It's called We're Going in the Den with You, Wayne. At first question I got is, at what moment did you discover you were a black man? I know you talked about different perspectives, but at what moment did you discover that?
I'll say, excuse me, in my 28 years so far, I think it was a little bit later. I want to say it was around 20, this is 2022, 5 years ago, would be about 23 years old. So about 2017, my grandfather had passed away, and he was kind of like the person I was leaning on for, like, I'd say like black philosophy. Okay. And then I couldn't have those conversations with him, so I kind of was figuring things out on my own. Then I had a African philosophy class at Temple University,
Mm-hmm.
and I think seeing the world from, again, to go back, seeing the world from that perspective made me
Yeah.
realize that I was a black man. I think this whole time I was realizing that I was black without the
Yeah.
man part. Like I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that I was a man. It wasn't really said to me that that's what I was. Even though my mom would say
Mm-hmm.
it to me, kind of
Yeah.
out of, well, this is what will happen to you if you're a black man. But I think that man part, I would say I was like 23, taking African philosophy class. That's when I realized I was both a black man, I was black
Mm-hmm.
and a man as well. So,
I never looked at it like that. So that even takes it to a different level of just thinking when you sit there and say, I was black, but I didn't know at what moment I became a black man. And I think that's big for myself. It's big for you. It's big for every young man that's coming after us. That sits there and say, "Well, I'm always told I'm a boy,"
mm,
and a lot of people understand there's a difference between boy and man.
mm,
A lot of people say I'm grown. So what does that mean too? Is I'm a grown man. So I think for me, I never looked at it like I just looked at it as I'm a black man. I never looked at it as I'm black and a man. So when you can also ask yourself, what does being a man mean in this
yeah,
space of blackness? And I would ask myself, I would even answer the question of what does it look like? It looks like you said in the beginning, different perspectives of what it looks like. We're a spectrum. We're
mm-hmm,
not just a monolith. We're all different. Like myself and you may look the same, but you think different than I do. You're on a different path than myself. I'm not an educator. I feel like I educate people in certain spaces, but you're educating the next generation of black boys, black girls, and just youth in general. So you have a different perspective on what you see as a black man right now. And I think I didn't hit that until I was 20 something, that man part of being a black man. So thank you for allowing me to hear that, because it's different for me and it's different for you. And so when you talked about the different perspectives, when you talked about being a black man, being black and a man, how did you explore the feelings of being black and then also recognizing that, I'm a man now? How did you explore your feelings in that space?
um, I'm smiling because I feel like uh, we're probably all going to have the same feelings. Exploring the feelings, I would say it was straight up anger.
Mm-hmm.
For shoot, I want to say maybe a year and a half,
Okay.
like anger and resentment, because you know, like you know that you are black. We all know that we are black. And get told that straight from out the womb.
Yeah.
And then I think once you realize like these sort of with the, I'll say like the hegemonic culture decides what a man
Mm-hmm.
is, and then you say to
Yeah.
yourself like, well, I can't meet all of these criteria that they call a man because like people like me that we
Mm-hmm.
don't even have access to some of those things.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like it kind of it's like it frustrates you. At least it frustrated me.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to just like navigate this whole thing of
Yeah.
like what it is to be a black man. Um, and then also and like exploring as well, you got to tune out some things because
Mm-hmm.
you'll have other things telling you what it is to be what it is a black man is supposed to be. And I
Yeah.
think that'll frustrate you too because you have
Yes, it will.
there really is no like set in stone sort of blueprint or guideline to like this is what a black man is because we are all so different and unique.
Mm-hmm.
That's why like for me when I was going through those feelings and those emotions it was anger because when I would read in either history books or you just turn on the television or I just listen to some music, you get the same sort
Yeah.
of black man. And it's just like that's not reflective of who I am. That's not reflective of the brothers that I know. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was anger at first, realizing, I guess, all of the sort of philosophical and institutional social framework that was used to kind of like take away our manhood, so
Okay.
to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But the long or short of it, that's kind of how I explored. It was just straight up anger, and then I think
Yeah.
I got I use so much energy to be mad that it's just like, well, I'm too tired to be mad today, so I'm not gonna be mad no
Mm-hmm.
more. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, long or short for the answer, that's pretty much how I explore my feelings. Um,
Okay. I agree with you. I'm just be honest with you. Like
yeah,
I went through it too. That process of I'm navigating this world as a black man. I see so many black men. They're all different. They're not me. So what do I do? And I'm glad that you said the word navigate because that's a hard thing to do, in my opinion. For some young black men, when it gets to you get to this split in the road where it's like, do I do what everybody else is doing, or do I just do me? Is me cool enough? Is me honest enough?
yeah.
Is me cool, happy enough for me? Or should I just follow the crowd and just focus on that? So I do want to ask you, how did you navigate, even though you said you have different perspectives, and you had this anger in you, even though you had this anger in you, you also had to navigate this world at some point. So how did you navigate society when it came down to, they said black men are this, black men are that, but you knew you did not fit that criteria. So how did you navigate the world knowing that you didn't fit in certain categories or certain criteria of what a black man meant?
I kind of took what my professor had done, and he had branded his image as
Mm-hmm.
like, because he was from Florida, and he said when
Yeah.
he came up to Philly, he said he said he either needed to be like a New York black person or like a Philly black person, but he didn't have too much research on a Philly black. So he said, I'm gonna just present myself like a New York black person, right? So
Yeah.
he came in with Tim's on, he came in with a baggy coat. He had on a do-rag and a scully underneath over top of it and all that. He just
Mm-hmm.
looking like straight up dude.
Yeah.
But in front of his name was doctor. Like if most of us see that on the street, we're gonna be like, oh, he's probably just somebody from around the way, just regular
Yeah.
person. But it didn't tell the whole story as to who he was. He was a doctor, like
Mm-hmm.
he and philosophy as well. Um, and I think like seeing his image, it made me realize that like I know that there's certain stereotypes around African Americans. One, I think the biggest thing was the hair. That's why I started to grow my
Mm-hmm.
hair out. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like, um, I guess you could say, kind of rebelling against what the norm, what we are comfortable, what we consider the norm to be. But I'm also presenting you with like, I'm exactly like how you are, or I'm
Mm.
just as smart, if not smarter, than what I may present myself to be. Like I
Yeah.
walk around with my hood on too, and whatnot. And I got my twists going and whatnot, but I'm still presenting myself like as professional at the same time. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I navigate, like being able, as you said, when you get to that crossroad, um, trying to find like how can I change? How can I
Mm-hmm.
also, be able to still be relatable to people as well? So
Mm-hmm.
that's I'd say like that's kind of how I navigated it. Just being embracing myself more. I would say just embracing myself, who I am as a
Mm-hmm.
black man more. Because even when even if you hit all the criteria of what someone else may define as a black person, it still won't be good enough. So just
Yeah.
embrace who I am more. That's how I did it.
Okay. I think more young black men should hear that.
Mm.
Embrace themselves more, because then you get to learn about yourself. You get to learn what you don't like, what you like, But you can say you don't know how to say this, or you can ask somebody. So I think embracing yourself, I think that young black men should hear that a little bit more. But then it's also, how do you model that? How do you model embracing who you are? Me, I like wearing hoodies. I like wearing hoodies that say certain things on them, but there's a message on my hoodie. I'm not just wearing something. But embracing who I am, I had to do the same thing. I had to embrace and say, well, who is Octavius in this space right now? Who is Octavius when it comes to life in general? My wife and I was just talking about it a few days ago. She asked me the question, like, who are you after all these other black men that you're talking to? And you say you model yourself after. Who are you after that? You have to embrace, like you just said, embrace who you are. But it's also, like you said, we do have some young black men that will grow their hair out. They may just do it because they like it. But I like what you said. You said I may be rebelling against the norm on what society says my hair should look like. But that doesn't take away from who I am.
Mm.
And when you say who I am, it's a smart individual, a traveler, a teacher, and a person that makes beats. He's a producer. But a lot of people will not know that because of what they see. But they're not going to ask you, how would you brand yourself? That, like, nobody's having that conversation out on the street, sitting there saying, oh, I see you got this hoodie on. Is that how you brand yourself? Like, that's not going to happen. Those conversations are not going to happen. So I appreciate you for saying, I embrace who I am. You're at a time now where it's like, who is Wayne? It's not like, who is Wayne in the eyes of this person or that person. No, I got to look myself in the mirror. I got to go to sleep with myself at night. So I thank you for saying it, because now it's on me. You're charging me to do the same exact thing, to sit there and say, well, I have to embrace myself. I have to remember who I am when it comes down to Octavius Blount. What does that mean to me, not to anyone else? So thank you. Thank you for saying that. And I do want to, I'm going to be digging a little bit more now, because when you talk about branding yourself, there's a space that I call rep. So obviously it's representation, expectations, and perception. So when the way you represent yourself, I just said three things for you. Those are things that those represent you. So with the identities that you have, how do you represent those in certain times? Let's say you say you're a teacher, but do you bring in that traveler space? Do you bring in that producer mindset? So when you're in different spaces, how do you represent those identities that you have?
I'll say, for the most part, in different spaces, I tend to be really reserved in those things. One, because I think it's just kind of hard to represent those things. Well, more so, like, it's kind of hard to kind of like show up and represent like my music production. But in that same vein, I would say, like, even though I can't like represent it in a more physical way other than like hearing it, I would say it'll show up in like my style. A lot of the music that I make tends to be geared towards, like, I make hip hop music for the most part, and then that'll show up in my just the way that I dress. When I'm going to work as a teacher, I may throw this same exact hoodie on that I have on now with some joggers. I got these New Balances. People always comment me on these StockX ones that I got. So it's like, it's kind of in my style when it comes to kind of like, my music and whatnot. It's infusing my style. And then like my teaching, that shows up, I would say, more so in like the patience, which is
Okay.
is probably not the ideal answer from a teacher, but as a first year teacher, the patience has been, having patience has been a big thing that has been showing up. You gotta have a whole lot of patience. And I think they've been, like, my students have been teaching me how to have patience. I've been learning from them. Okay, I need to give them more wait time when answering questions. So I think that kind of shows up sometimes in my identity. When I'm talking to people, I tend to let them speak for more so,
Hmm.
and then I'll listen. So, but how I represent my identity, I think for the main thing, represent my identity, because I don't like do too much talking. Is always going to be in my style.
Yeah.
Just the way that I show up, the way that I dress.
Hmm.
Business casual. You still may see me coming with joggers and some
Yeah.
sneaks. So yeah.
Okay. So for me, it's when I first saw you, yes, we saw each other. You were doing an internship with Council Member Kenyatta Johnson
Hmm.
through Temple University. Um, I saw you with a suit on.
Yeah.
So I saw Wayne in a suit, but then I also saw you when you came to several events that we had. And I saw you in ball shorts, t-shirt. And then now, when you're talking about how you represent yourself as hoodie, joggers, you may have on a shirt, and New Balances. That's how you represent. But I also like how you said you infuse your style of music into what you wear. But then it's also bringing in the thought process of, hey, society says this over here. So they have expectations for us. They have
Hmm.
expectations for the world that we live in and the people that live in it. So when you say, well, I wear hoodie, joggers, and New Balances to work, but some people will be like, well, should you be wearing that?
Hmm.
Um, and in my mind, the question for me is like, how do you, with the expectations that you have for yourself, but then also the world, like that's a battle between yourself and obviously what you think the world thinks of you. So how do you overcome that battle of just this is who I am, this is who Wayne is versus what they think black men are, what they should wear, what they should look like?
That's a that's a question right there.
I get everybody on here with those.
Yeah, that's a good one right there. Because that's it's still a battle. I think it'll probably always be a
Mm,
battle as well.
yeah.
Um, I think for me, the and this may be a big answer and a lot of backtracking, but for
Mm,
me, it starts with religion for me.
okay.
Having that sort of faith foundation, like
Hmm.
I have something or someone or a community to lean on when I make these very, because even though it is like, just growing your hair out for, black people, that's a big decision because it's like, dang, I know I may
Yeah.
not get a lot of jobs because my hair is out. Um, so, having that foundation of religion, knowing that
Hmm.
like I could feel a little bit more comfortable in making those big
Yeah.
decisions that may feel, scary, but, I know that the
Hmm.
Lord has my back. Um,
Yes.
Also, too, like the household that I grew up in as well. I know like some households, some black households, not all, they'll, talk about like identity. Like
Yeah.
there's an expectation for identity.
Hmm.
But with my household, it was very hands off. Um,
Yeah.
my mother kind of encouraged me when it came to being different. That I think she wanted me to
Hmm.
be different because she really didn't want me to be out on the street. Um,
Hmm.
so she tried everything to make sure that I was different, and then she would validate those differences as well. Saying like
Hmm.
it's a good thing that you do this, it's a good thing that you do that. So I think like my foundation, I was already comfortable, and I know like
Yeah.
for any other black person hearing this, I know like or anybody else really, you may not have had that foundation. But even with having a foundation like that, it's still hard, as an adult. I think now as an adult, I just tell myself that like people just gonna have to deal with me the way that I am. Like
Hmm.
I'm just gonna show up this way. If they think that I'm a thug because I got my hoodie on and I got my twist, then so be it. Then I just don't don't present myself in that way. I don't think a lot of people understand that even me presenting myself that way is kind of like a survival tactic too. Like
Hmm.
You know, we're both from
Talk
Philly.
about it.
We're both from Philly. It's just like in order for me to get from Germantown to South Philly, I got to put on a certain face. That way nobody
Mm-hmm.
messes with me, you know?
Yeah.
So, he kind of get used to it. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, I just say, listen, like I'm here, I'm gonna do my thing. I'm gonna be as comfortable as I can because
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. So I think,
Yeah.
for those of us who may be hearing it and are struggling with, you know, what is these expectations that people place upon me, but I want to do
Mm-hmm.
this. It's just
Yeah.
do what it is that is true to yourself. Um, just do what it is that's true to yourself. Those expectations, if you didn't make them or if someone didn't make them for you out of love, don't even worry about them.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm. Mm. They didn't make that decision out of love. Thank you. That's big because people make decisions for you that may not be out of love and maybe for their own personal gain. So thank you for saying that out loud and not holding that back because that's key, especially for young black men and black girls, and just people in general. Um, make those decisions out of love. If you do that, then you'll be fine. I also want to go back to what you said. I'm not trying to be like devil's advocate, but I'm trying to get to the point of when you say when you go from Germantown to South Philly, you have to put on a certain face. This is not a question for you. This is just me speaking out loud. Um, it gets to a point where I just want us as black men not to have to do that.
mm-hmm.
To get back to that, hey, bro, like I see you. It doesn't have to be like what you looking at me for. Like, no, I'm looking at you because I see you. I'm acknowledging that I see you and I respect you and I care for you and I love you. Like, I think that's like we should get back to that. And even having to do that is a hard thing to have to do. Like you're just thinking like, can I at least like show my teeth? Can I be happy when I'm walking down the street? Can I do this? Can I do that? Like that's too much thinking you have to do just to get from Germantown to South Philly, even though that's a struggle in itself, trying to get from Germantown to South Philly. And you have to think about everything else that's going on around you. And like, why can't I just be in my own space, but also understand that, like, King, I see you. Like, I really see you. Like, I'm not looking at you for no reason. Like, I see you.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to go back to that because that's a thing that some young black boys go through right now is, do people see me? And if they don't, I'm upset. But I just want us to get back to the point of we don't have to do that. Like we have to get back to the point of like loving each other, brotherly love, and moving forward in a way where we can get things done together and not think about negative things all the time. So I just wanted to backtrack a little bit and get to that, but I also want to backtrack even more when you talked about faith and religion when it comes to how you move and your expectations on yourself. It's like I'm moving in a way where I know who got my back. I feel the same exact way, brother. I think you know me. I do things um, strategically. I make decisions with my wife. We pray about certain things,
Mm-hmm.
but we also know when we're moving, we know who got us, and we have to take into account that that man doesn't fail
Yeah.
at all. And when we go down a path that he doesn't want us to go on, he's like, I got you, but you're going to have to go and stumble a little bit, but I'm going to bring you back over here. So I just wanted to backtrack double time with that because that was very important. Um, but also going towards the statement of how you present yourself, expectations you have for yourself, and also society has on you. Just got one question for you: is how would you like people to perceive black men just in general? Like I can say yourself, but I know you're in that group. But how would you just want society to perceive black men? Um, Black men.
Um, I guess to start us off, I can't think of the antonym or the perfect antonym
Mm-hmm.
just yet, but starting off
Yeah.
not as predators. Um,
Mm.
that's like the first thing. So not seen as like,
Yeah.
you if you are walking uh down the street at night, nobody's going to assume automatically like you are a uh, a threat immediately, or just even in the daytime.
Mm-hmm.
Um, um, as lovers as well, like not just
Yeah.
men who are straight up stone cold and whatnot, like because that's not who we are at all, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as more, not more of lovers, but like as lovers too, or
Mm-hmm.
we love family, we love friends, we love a whole lot of things. We have values as well.
Mm-hmm.
As innovators and inventors outside of just sports. Like
Mm-hmm.
don't get me wrong. I just brought NFL Red Zone. I just brought it, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I'm proud of the brothers doing what they do in the sports. But at the same time, you know, we are innovators in all aspects besides just the entertainment as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, but definitely, I think the predators more so. That's like the main thing for me. Like not as predators, not as just straight thugs, criminals, all of that. So yeah.
Okay. I'm glad that you put a spin on it when it comes to we also are lovers, because being a human, you also gotta love people. You can be angry, you can be upset, you can have mood swings, you can be whatever it is you want to be. But as a human, we still gotta love each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had a lot of, but this question get a lot of people because it allows us to explain, sit there and say, well, I want y'all to see us as human and not as predators, thugs, and this, and that, which was what society, deemed us to be. And I'm also glad that you slid in there and said innovators and inventors, because that's true. Um, so for me, I think I would agree with everything you said. Um, and I would put a big check mark next to lover, because I think we're, as black men, some people forget that we can love. Some people forget that we can express feelings. And I think that's one thing that, because I'm an emotional individual. I
Mm-hmm.
cry, not on cue, but I cry, and I think people should know that. Um, I've said to you on several occasions, I love you, like, and I mean it. And I know when you say it back, you mean it. So I think people need to see not just one aspect of a black man, because yes, we all can be upset, but there's other aspects of us that people do not get to see. And I think that's a goal of mine, a goal of a lot of other black men, is to say, hey, look, like, we're not all just angry. Like, we get angry, but we're not always angry. So thank you for adding in those tidbits into that space, because it's important. Um, I do want to ask you, um, if possible. I'm not gonna say three. I'm not gonna say, you can say as many as you want. We're getting into the space of um, providing advice,
Mm-hmm.
because there's some things, some nuggets that you gave, that I said this is something that young black men should hear. So, if possible, what pieces of advice would you give either the older generation or the younger generation? I asked that question because the main goal of this podcast is to um, show that older generation and the younger generation, there's some tension. We know that already.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like brothers like myself and you, who are in the middle, to say we learn from you, but we hear you. Y'all not doing it right. So the middle brother is that person that listens, translates, and adapts to any space that they're in, to support the older generation and the younger generation. So if you could, what piece of advice would you give the two to break that tension?
To give it to break that tension, I will always, the one thing that I always say is make sure you always pay attention to your history. Make sure you always pay attention to your history. The one thing in our history as African Americans that I notice is when we don't work together, whether it be two different ideologies or whether it be the old or the young, the rich or the poor, when we don't work together, we don't succeed in the future. We end up in the same exact spots that we are. Where we are today with gun violence was an issue, maybe not so much with guns, but in the 80s with drugs. So I think one, in order to not repeat history, we should listen to each other. I think if you're more inclined to just argue to be right, like I'm the younger brother, I'm right, I'm the older brother, I'm right, and you're just arguing for that reason, and you're not arguing for an actual purpose, then it's like you kind of like detracting from this whole thing. But my one biggest advice is just learning from your history, because it will repeat. History will repeat. It will repeat. Another thing is too is just learning from your younger brother. I think a lot of the times as the older and even as the middle, we will assume that we know it all. I've been on this earth for X amount of years. I've seen it all. You only been on here for X, so you don't really know.
Yeah.
But the younger brother also has a lot to add, because they pick up on the peripherals that we don't see. Just like, somebody, you have a trainer and they just like, oh, you need to work on this. You're not really, your shot's a little off on this side. And you just like, oh, I didn't even notice that. And it's kind of like, that's what the younger brother kind of does as well. It's like telling you kind of like other avenues, giving you other avenues, trying to help you out, trying to scratch your back in a newer way, in a more, I would say in a more innovative way. Because the younger brother is always going to be the innovator. And then third, I don't have anything specific for both older and younger, but I think specifically for our younger brothers out there is language is powerful, and make sure you try to learn, even if it's at the most basic level, the language of computer coding and that nature. I'm not a novice in it at all, but I know how important language was for our ancestors, how they were barred from language, and how important once they learned how to read, and how that changed the whole game for them. That's the same thing when it comes to like this technology. A lot of answers, a lot of secrets will be written right within it. It's like, you hear people saying algorithms that are racist to blacks. Is just like, yeah. We used to have literature. If we don't still, which we probably do, we got literature that was racist towards blacks, and it gave a lot of people the framework to really take advantage of our community. So don't let them take advantage of you. Learn that language of computers, even if it's the most basic thing. Just learn it. That's my. Well, I feel like all the brothers can probably do that. I just said the younger brother because the younger brother has more time. But I think all the brothers, older and middle as well.
Okay. Thank you for sharing how that tension can be broken. Because that's like I said, it's the main reason for this podcast is how we have different brothers on that are from different generations. And it allows us to have the conversation of how can we grow together. And that's the main thing. Like the biggest question for me is like based on what you've seen and like what you've experienced in life, what's one thing black men can do just to grow together? Like what's that one thing that just based off your experience and what you've seen and observed?
I want to say the whole, as we talked about earlier, not having to put on that poker face. Um, and I know that that can work, but it seems like it can be kind of regional because, you know, being here in DC for 1 year, I have to adjust because now there's less time for me to, or there's less need for me to put on a poker face while I'm down here. Black people always speak to one another. Well, not always, but you know, it's more speaking to one another and less of the poker
Yeah.
face. And I think just understanding that, like, you know, the person that lives next door, down the street, or around the corner from me, they're not my enemy. You know, we have a common struggle. Um, and if we were to actually love each other, or maybe not even go so far much as far as love, but, you know, just tolerate or acknowledge that other person's existence, then we can do a whole lot more for one another. And to kind of go back, I know like me and my brother have a joke, like, you know, like people in Philly be like, good morning. Like, what you mean, good morning? That's kind of how it is in Philly. And here people will speak a little bit more. Um, but I feel like regardless of where you are, that's kind of like one thing. It's kind of breaking down that poker face.
Hmm. Thank you again, because you said it. You said multiple things in there that I'm taking out. You said that person down the street or around the corner is not your enemy,
Mm-hmm.
but then it's also breaking down that poker face. So with those two, breaking down that poker face is more of an internal. Like you have to have that conversation with yourself. And then when you talk about the enemy, I'm not your enemy. Now that's a conversation between me and you, meaning I'm trying to break this down over here. Like I have some things going on my end that I have to figure out. Why do I have to put on this poker face? Why am I doing this? And then now I can have a conversation with you to sit there and say, why do I think I'm your enemy? You look just like me. Why are you my enemy? And I think um, I commend you for saying all the things that you said, because I know that you live that way. You sit there and say, I got to work on myself, and then we can work on each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've seen that with you, and because you keep me accountable, I keep you accountable. But on my end, I have to keep myself accountable before I sit there and say something to you, and that's very hard. And I think breaking down that poker face is the start. Is the start of anything, because now a lot of people want to say self hatred. If you hate black people, then you hate yourself. And I'm like, I get it, but it's also there's some trauma. There's some things that brothers, sisters are going through that they may not know how to navigate that space, or that conversation. Um, and just changing that mindset of it's okay not to be okay. Like it's okay to be upset, but it's also okay to love your next door neighbor,
Mm-hmm.
appreciate your next door neighbor, acknowledge your next door neighbor, but then also acknowledge those that are in your family that are doing good things. So thank you again, like I said, for providing that space and providing that understanding for me and for those that are listening. Um, Before we end, I want to elevate you. Um, when it comes to the space of, I know you said you're a traveler. If you want to tell people where you're traveling, where you think about traveling, any music you got coming up next. I know you said you're a teacher. You taking your kids on any trips? Are you got any fun activities that you would love to share with other first year teachers, or teachers that, like you said, older generation may be set in their ways? You got any activities you can give to
Um, I would say if you can go to a national park. I think the closest one in Philly is Valley Forge, but down here the closest one to DC is Shenandoah, which is really different from Valley Forge. And
them?
but I think the main thing is just getting out, getting away. I really do enjoy national parks because It's a
Hmm.
180. It's literally a 180 from the city. Um,
Yeah.
not as much concrete. It's nothing but trees and nature. So, um, yeah, national parks, my thing. I was planning a trip to go to Australia, to go to Sydney. Um,
Okay.
but, but that may be put on hold. Um, that may be put on hold
We
for a
put on
while.
hold.
Um,
That's fine.
but I'm always a big advocate of traveling outside the country. Besides going to like, normal places that people go, like
Hmm.
LA and Vegas, Miami. I'm always a big advocate of going like uh go somewhere different.
Yeah.
Um, as far as teaching and trips, I think so. Our next unit that we're talking about, Canada, United States, we plan on going to American Indian Museum. I would say that's
Okay.
Smithsonian American Indian Museum.
Hmm.
If I would say for those of you that may not be in the DMV area, if you have like a Indigenous Peoples Museum near you, definitely go and check that out. Learn about the indigenous people of the land that you live on. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, as far as music, I don't promote my music that much because I haven't posted in I don't know how long.
Yeah.
Um, only thing is that one thing is I've been listening to this genre called funk. It's spelled
Okay.
PHPHONK. Um,
Hmm.
if you look it up now, you'll just get nothing but cowbells, like real fast paced music, nothing but cowbells. But
Hmm.
I listen to it. I don't listen to the cowbell fast pace. That's too much for me. That's too high adrenaline for me. But they it's a broad range of rap. It's like it's basically instrumental bass. Um,
Hmm.
it's a derivative of like '90s Memphis hip hop. So
Okay.
that's all. That's literally all I've been listening to. I can't listen to no nobody. Like if Cole would have dropped,
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
couldn't listen to it. I haven't listened to that Kendrick. I can't. But that's all I got though.
Okay. Well, brother, I want to say thank you
I
for being a
appreciate
guest.
you. Yeah.
I love you, man. I want to appreciate everybody for listening.
Mm,
I do want you to follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Everythinker Media. We also have merch coming soon. It'll be in the link in the description. And also check out our website. We got some new projects coming out. That also be in the link in the description as well. And we'll see you all next time with another brother here on the Middle Brother Podcast. Peace.